You gotta think it'd be tough to be a vampire therapist, because he doesn't believe in personal reflection. This is your spooky spot on new Jada Toys Universal Monsters, Dracula. The Universal Monsters have finally been made into 6-inch scale figures. Jada presents the Dracula figure based on the classic 1931 film. He is fully articulated and comes with interchangeable heads and several accessories. Going to be checking out some brand new Universal Monster figures from the folks over at Jada Toys, which are available right now in retail stores and online if you're looking to pick these up for yourself. To check out the accessories that come included with Dracula. Starting first, he gets himself the candelabra. The candelabra here is molded in fairly soft gold plastic, but it's a very nicely detailed candelabra handle with, of course, the dripping candle on the top there. I like that they've lit the wick on the top there so you can explain why the wax is trickling down. And this can be held in Dracula's hands. Not necessarily the hands that are swappable hands, but currently the hands that are sitting in the sockets of his forearms will do the job nicely. Let's pick the figure up for a second. Throw back his cape. I love the look of this cape, by the way. And take this hand, because the other hand is a pointing hand. That's not going to be doing much help at all to hold the candelabra. And all you really need to do is just pry the fingers slightly away from the palm, just to get the handle in there. Wiggle and shimmy the handle in, and you can get yourself Dracula carrying around the candelabra, which is probably going to be the way I'm going to display the figure. I really like the way that that looks. Playing then into this hand, that serves right now not only as a pointing hand, but it also helps to do one other thing too, which involves then the next accessory that we're going to have a look at. Dracula comes included with a vampire bat. At least I'm assuming it's a vampire bat. Based on the fact that this is something that's going to be sitting on his finger, I would then assume that this isn't himself transformed into a bat. I can't think that he's literally holding himself as a bat. The bat is nicely detailed. It's molded here in fairly soft brown plastic. It would have certainly been nice if they had gone in there and painted the eyes, maybe a nice bright red. I'm sure that's something I could easily go in and do that myself. Now you'll see on the bottom here, there's a couple of holes. Now that's where his... Now, would a bat still have talons, or would by now they be claws? Somebody, I'm sure, who's expert and knowledgeable on bats could probably tell me down below in the comment section. But you literally get a hole that runs straight through the bottom. Now, you can then take the finger of Dracula, and something you have to be very careful of, because the soft nature of the plastic that are on the little claws of the bat, I'm sure would be very susceptible to breaking. But we're going to do one of them at least, and not maybe feed them all the way through. You really only need the one, although it looks a little strange that he's floating like this off to one side. But you can actually have Dracula holding the bat. Again, doesn't really make me think that that's himself transformed into the bat, because again, I can't think he's carrying around himself as a bat. But that's nice. That's a great way of displaying the figure as well. Might just end up ultimately displaying him with both the candelabra and both the bat, just because I think that both accessories are fantastic to come include with the figure. Carefully, let's remove the bat. We'll put that to the side. Dracula also comes included. Just put the figure down here for 1 second. Comes with a couple of interchangeable hands as well. What would you use to describe these hands? Mystifying? Ooh, mystifying. I don't think I've ever used the word mystifying here on this channel. But they're mystifying hands. Slightly chunky digits. It looks as if he's probably wearing gloves, I would imagine. A few little pieces of additional plastic on there, but nice little additional hands. I don't think these will ever see light of day. Oh, I see what I did there. That's a vampire joke. I'm here all day. I don't think I'm ever going to use these with the figure because, again, truth be told, I like the idea of him being displayed with the candelabra, and might even go to the extent of having him displayed with the bat as well. He does come with one other accessory too, and that's an interchangeable head that seems like it's been decapitated and rolling on the ground. We're going to look at that first. Well, we're not going to look at it first. First, what we're going to do is look at the figure itself. I'm going to bring the cape around to get that full effect going. This is the stock head sculpt of Dracula when you take him out of the plastic prison. Admittingly, I think that's a pretty good likeness to actor Bela Lugosi, who of course made the role quite rather famous in the classic 30s film. The coloring on it is pretty good. You've got the shinier widow's peak there for his hair. There's a little bit of additional paint there on the top, but the head sculpt looks pretty good. I like the darker purple they've airbrushed around the eyes, as well the darker pink they've used for his lips. It would be certainly interesting to see this guy eventually get a release as a black and white version, which I'm not sure is something that Jada Toys is considering, but being the fact that they already have the mold in place and a decent already head sculpt to start with, I think it would make perfect sense to release this guy down the road as a black and white version. He does, like I said, come with 2 swappable head sculpts, so if you want to have your Dracula with visible fangs, then this would be the head sculpt that does the job. I got a little bit of paint there on the back of his ear, but on that, even though I'm still going to settle, I think, on this head sculpt here, because I think it's the better of the two. I like the idea at least they included an alternate head sculpt if you wanted to have a more sinister looking vampire, or Count Dracula. To change out the heads, what you're going to do is just hold on to the torso and just wiggle the head off the ball joint. You may be alarmed to see how long this post is when I remove the head, but just wiggle it back and forth, minding, of course, the back collar of his cape, and just pop that off. You can see how long that post is. Something also that you can do too is remove the cape. Now the cape has an elastic strap on the front, but it's also attached on the back by pegs here. There's a peg right there. One has already come loose. The peg is actually located, well, I'll take this off so you can see what I'm talking about. You have to detach this from the peg that's on the back of his torso, like that. And then you can actually just remove the cape in its entirety. I may ultimately put the cape back on, but it's just enough to show you that there's a couple of little pegs on the backs of his shoulders. I guess they put that there so the cape stays a little more stable when you have it on display. But you have a fully realized Dracula if you want to have him displayed without the cape. And that's the one thing I really like about it. It didn't have a big obnoxious pego on the back. I mean, it still looks like it's a nice fully sculpted and finished torso. And then, of course, we can go ahead and then put Dracula's fang head on there. And just wiggle that back and forth. Now, the swappable head sculpt, I had a little bit more tougher time getting it on there. I find actually in both the cases, the ball peg, you really do have to push the head down to get it in place. That's what Dracula looks like with this alternate head sculpt. Just in case you forgot what the other one looked like, that's what the original stock head sculpt looks like. Personal preference more, though. I still think I like this head sculpt of the two. Painted rather nicely, though. We're going to leave the cape off for the time being, just so we can have a look at the articulation on the figure. I'm going to put the figure down here for a second just so I can show you what the actual cape looks like. It's a decent material that they've actually used. The one side almost comes across like almost a velvet, and then the interior, of course, is that really bright red. It's been sewn as 3 separate pieces stitched together, and then you've got that nice drape that's going to drape across his front of his shoulders, like we looked at the beginning of this review. Really nice, good quality cape that they included with the figure. But we're going to put this down for the time being. We'll go back to that, I'm sure, as we get to the final looks of the figure. Let's pick Dracula up here, get a closer look at the details there on his jacket. His tuxedo seems to be as a separate piece, although, again, you wouldn't be able to remove it because these sleeves, of course, will still be part of the jacket. He's got some really nice detailing done. Coloring is pretty good on this guy as well. Now, the legs seem a little on the shorter side when you compare them to the lengths of the arms. One thing I kind of like about the charm of the Universal Monster figures that Jada Toys have put out is that they really look like, in some ways, vintage figures. And I certainly hope that doesn't sound like insulting, because quite the contrary. I like the idea that these figures look like figures I would have maybe had back in the 80s. Granted, yes, back in the 80s, you wouldn't have not had as much of the articulation that you can get on these ones. I mean, they have quite a bit that we'll talk about in a second. But nice overall detailed figures. Very nice shiny looking shoes as well. And he does also have pegals on the undersides of his feet, though they don't actually include display stands with these figures themselves. Looking at the articulation now on Count Dracula, his head rotates all the way around. And because he had that long post, it allows the head to go up and look far down, and you can also rock it back and forth too. Now the shoulders come out, but not fully at a 90-degree angle. Almost closer to being, I think, a 45-degree angle. And you can also take those arms and rotate them, of course, all the way around. The bicep swivels. He has a double hinge on the elbow, which is nice. And the hands themselves rotate all the way around with also a little hinge joint in there too. Though the hinge joint only gives you that much of a wiggle space with the hands themselves. The upper torso if I can actually get in there, behind the long-tailed jacket is on a ball joint. So that's nice. The legs split out, what seems on a ball joint. You can bring the legs forward and back, swivel 3/4 of the way up the thigh. There's a cut there, double hinge on the knee. And then when it comes to the feet, they move back and forth this way. A little strange, though, when you hinge the foot forward, that it actually frees itself where it looks like the heel is a separate piece from the rest of the leg or rest of the foot. And, of course, you got that ankle pivot, too. Nice, generous ankle pivot that they've given Dracula here. It is a really nice-looking figure. Ultimately, though, while we did sort of settle the end of this review with this alternate head sculpt, let's get something a little more sinister going here. There we go. Well, it's certainly nice to see that they included a swappable head sculpt. I think ultimately, though, I'm still going to settle on the head sculpt that we started with at the beginning of this review. Just first of all, it bears more resemblance to Bela Lugosi. And second of all, I think it's just more of that classic look of Dracula. But at least Jada Toys included 2 versions of a different head sculpt. So if you wanted to display him with more of the fangs showing, you have that available option as well. And because the cape is removable, you really have 2 ways of displaying Dracula if you'd like. And FYI, by the way, no, I'm not spelling fui. I don't even think that's an actual word. FYI, though, you don't actually have to remove Dracula's head in order to put the cape in place. The cape actually, short of me just tabbing it onto the back of his torso, fits enough easily over top of his existing head that, again, you don't have to pop the head off in order to put the cape back on or take the cape off. Interesting thing about the cape, though, is if you look at the back of the packaging where all the 4 figures are featured, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, and Creature from the Black Lagoon, you may notice not only does Dracula sport a different head sculpt, but it seems as well that his cape is made of plastic. I like the fact that they didn't use plastic for his cape. It makes not only for feeling like the figure's more retro, but I find it's always nice to have cloth capes. At least it's on a case-per-case basis, but I think for Dracula, it works better to have him with a cloth cape than it does a plastic cape. Certainly, it does limit a little more articulation if he was to have a plastic cape, so I'm really glad to see that Jada Toys made that switch. Of course, in the month of Spottober, that's the name we've dedicated for October. It's really actually called October, but this month, we will be having a look at Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, and Creature from the Black Lagoon, the other 3 figures from this lineup, as I was able to pick up all 4 of the figures. So make sure if you are wanting to see the rest of the reviews that you're keeping your ghoulish peepers peeled to this channel, that if you are new to this channel, you're hitting that subscribe button down below and turning on the bell notification, and that, yes, you're making sure you're coming back, because the rest of the reviews of the Jada Toys Universal Monsters will be coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.